Welcome, beautiful soul. I'm grateful you're here, because only kind hearts pause to hear stories like this. Tonight, I want to share the journey of a black mother named Zola Matthews, a woman whose love was mistaken for absence, whose silence was judged as weakness, and whose fight taught everyone watching what a mother's heart really looks like under pressure. They tried to break her spirit. They tried to turn her struggle into a label, into a file number. But they forgot one thing. A black mother's love is not fragile. It is forged in fire. This is the story of how she took pain and turned it into power. How she stood up in a system that was not built for her, and still claimed her dignity. This is Black Women's Soul. When they tried to break her spirit, a black mother's fight for justice. The rain had turned the courthouse stairs into a slick gray river. People rushed past Zola holding their coats tight, heads down, trying not to slip. She didn't move yet. She stood at the bottom of the steps, looking down at the drawing in her hand instead of the building in front of her. It was wrinkled from being folded and unfolded for weeks. Her son's small handwriting pressed into the paper. His crayon drawing showed her with a bright yellow crown on her head, stick arms opened wide, both of them smiling. The edges were soft now, corners bent and shiny from the oil on her fingers. She rubbed her thumb over the crown and breathed out slowly. Her back hurt from another night on her feet at the hospital. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. Her stomach felt hollow. But none of that mattered today. Today was not about being tired. Today was about proving something much louder than exhaustion. That she was still his mother. She looked up at the tall building. Inside, people in clean suits and polished shoes would flip through papers with her name on it. They would decide, in careful legal words, whether she was a danger or a protector. Most of them had never worked a night shift. Most of them had never been one late paycheck away from losing everything. Zola pulled in a breath, held it, and let it go.
I know what they think when they see me standing here with this old bag and these tired eyes. I know what those files say, the ones they pass back and forth like I'm just another problem on a busy day. They see neglect and poor judgment. They don't see how many nights I held my son when he had a fever or how many extra shifts I took just to keep food in the fridge. They don't know how it feels to choose between losing your job and leaving your child alone for 20 minutes and still hate yourself either way. They don't know me. Not yet. But they will.
She tucked the drawing carefully into her bag, as if it was something holy, and started up the steps. They think I'm weak, she whispered under her breath. But they don't know what a mother becomes when her child is taken. Then she pushed the heavy glass door open and walked inside. Before anyone called her neglectful, before there were case numbers and hearings and folders full of paperwork with her name misspelled on the tab, Zola Matthews was just a quiet black girl trying to make it through the noise. She grew up in a neighborhood where the walls were thin, and you could hear other people's arguments through your own bedroom. The apartment was small, 2 rooms connected by a short hallway, with a kitchen that always smelled like fried onions and floor cleaner. The linoleum was faded in the middle where feet had walked the longest. The window stuck in the winter and rattled in the summer. Her mother, Denise, was the heartbeat of that space. She worked as a home nurse, traveling between houses, caring for people who were sick or lonely or both. Sometimes she came home with sadness in her eyes. Sometimes with small funny stories about old men who flirted badly or grandmothers who hid candy under their pillows. She left before sunrise in those white nursing shoes that were always, somehow, still white by the end of the day. When she came home, she would sit on the couch and slide those shoes off slowly, as if her feet were made of glass. She rubbed her ankles in small circles and hummed under her breath, a low tune without words. Zola would sit beside her and lean her head against her mother's shoulder, breathing in the scent of soap, sweat, and something warm she could never quite describe.
I didn't need big speeches from her. I didn't need "I love you" every 5 minutes. The way she kicked off those shoes and still asked if I had eaten, even when her eyes were half closed. That was my comfort. I learned early that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just somebody showing up again and again, no matter how tired they are.
Her father, Leonard, was the opposite in every way that mattered. He fixed things for a living: old radios with broken knobs, chairs with one short leg, faucets that never stopped dripping. The neighbors called him when something needed patching or tightening. He could take apart almost anything and put it back together. But when it came to people, he kept his distance. He sat at the kitchen table most evenings with a screwdriver in one hand and a cigarette in the other, twisting wires and squinting through the smoke. He spoke in short sentences. He didn't shout. He didn't hug. He didn't say much at all. The house always felt like it got smaller when he walked in, as if everyone else had to step around his quiet. Zola had an older sister, Camille, who was everything she wasn't: bold, loud, full of plans. Camille talked about college like it was another planet she was definitely going to live on. She taped pictures from magazines on the wall over her bed: airplanes, city skylines, beaches with clear water. While Leonard worked in silence and Denise slept between shifts, Camille would stand in the middle of the living room and say things like, "I'm not staying here. Watch me." Zola watched. She watched everything. She was the kind of girl who noticed small details. The way her mother's shoulders drooped lower on Fridays than on Mondays. The way her father's hand shook a little when he lit his cigarette. The way Camille's voice got softer when she talked about leaving, like she didn't want to scare the dream away. When Camille left for university, the apartment seemed to lose some of its noise and half of its color. Her room became a quiet square with a bare mattress and a few forgotten stickers peeling off the wall. Denise moved slower that week. Leonard smoked more. Zola filled the space with chores. She cooked simple meals, folded laundry into precise stacks, took over the grocery list. She realized she liked knowing things were taken care of. Responsibility felt heavy, but it felt familiar too. Then came the day everything broke apart for real. It was a Sunday afternoon. Denise was home for once, moving around the kitchen in her worn-out t-shirt and gray sweatpants, humming as she cleaned up after lunch. The TV was on in the living room, some old movie playing too low to really hear. Zola was in the hallway when she heard the crash. It wasn't loud enough to be a dropped pot. It was sharp, glass hitting tile. She ran into the kitchen and saw her mother on the floor. Her body was twisted in a way that looked wrong, one arm stretched out, fingers just inches from a broken glass. Her eyes were open but empty. Her mouth moved slightly, but no sound came out. "Mama." Zola's voice cracked. "Mama, hey, get up." There was no answer. Her hands shook as she dialed 911, giving the address in a voice that sounded far away even to her own ears. The paramedics arrived quickly, boots stomping, bags opening, words like stroke, and no response hanging in the air. At the hospital, a doctor used phrases Zola had never heard in real life. Massive stroke. Severe brain bleed. "We did what we could." She sat in the waiting room gripping her mother's purse so tight her fingers hurt. After a while she opened it and saw those familiar white shoes, still clean, laces tucked in. They were lined up neatly as if they were ready for the next morning's shift. That next morning never came. Denise died that night. In the days that followed, the apartment seemed to float out of focus. People came and went, dropping off casseroles and sympathy cards. Zola moved through them like a shadow, picking up plates, wiping down counters, trying to hold on to something that didn't feel real. Leonard didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat in his usual chair, staring at a spot on the wall, as if something important was written there. He stayed like that for 1 year. One day, Zola woke up and ready for her routine works, then she moved towards her father's room. And then she found his chair empty, his work boots gone, and the small duffel bag from the top of the closet missing. No note. No goodbye. Just absence.
I remember walking through that apartment that morning and realizing every sound had changed. The fridge hummed louder. The pipes groaned more. The building itself felt like it knew something was missing. I was 23.
no parents.
No sister nearby. Just me, the rent, and a bunch of bills with dates that didn't care what I'd lost. I wanted to lie down and disappear. Instead, I washed the dishes and went looking for a job. I didn't know what else to do.
She found work where her mother had once worked, at the hospital. Not as a nurse, not even in a patient-facing role. She became one of the people nobody noticed unless something was dirty. Her shift started at 7 p.m. and ended at 3 a.m. She scrubbed floors, emptied trash cans, wiped down handrails. She wore a uniform that smelled like strong bleach, and a name tag that most people never bothered to read. At night, the hospital was a different world. The bright daytime energy drained away. Hallways stretched long and quiet, machines beeped in steady rhythms, and voices dropped to low murmurs. Sometimes she walked past rooms where families were holding hands, praying. Sometimes she saw a nurse standing alone at a window, staring out into the dark parking lot. There were moments when she passed a certain corridor and felt her chest tighten. It was the same wing where her mother had taken her lunch breaks. She could almost see Denise there, sitting on a bench, shoes off, rubbing her ankles. She worked, went home to the small apartment, heated leftover rice in the microwave, watched old movies on a second-hand TV, and fell asleep on the couch more often than in bed. Her life was small, quiet, safe in the way that routine can feel like protection. Then she met Derek Matthews. He worked in building maintenance and knew how to make tired people laugh. He was the kind of black man who carried his charm like cologne. Something you noticed even from a few steps away. He had a crooked smile that showed up before his jokes did, and a voice that turned excuses into stories. He noticed Zola first in the break room, struggling with the stubborn coffee machine. "You gotta hit it here," he said, tapping the side. "It's like these machines only listen if you talk to them nice." She gave a small laugh. He grinned wider. Days later, he showed up again during her lunch break, this time with 2 cups of coffee, one held out toward her. "Figured you might want one that actually came out of a working machine." He started walking her to the bus stop after late shifts, saying things like, "I'm not staying on this maintenance grind forever. I'm gonna start my own business. My own crew. You'll see." He talked about buying a house one day, maybe getting land somewhere quieter, maybe opening a little shop. Zola didn't fully believe him, not at first. But she liked the way he saw her, not as that quiet girl from cleaning, but as someone he wanted to talk to. They moved in together after 6 months. Married a year later. It was a small ceremony in a plain room downtown. No flowers, no crowd, just a couple of witnesses and a judge who had done this 100 times. Still, when Derek slipped the simple ring on her finger and whispered, "We're gonna build something, Zoe, you and me," she let herself believe him. For a while, life got softer again. He cooked dinner sometimes, dancing with her in the kitchen to old R&B songs. They laughed at silly sitcoms and argued playfully over which movie to watch. She felt seen in a way she hadn't since her mother was alive. But good seasons don't always last, especially when the roots underneath are shaky. The change started small. A late job here. A mix-up with the schedule there. A few missing dollars from the envelope she kept in the drawer for rent. She found receipts that weren't for groceries or tools. Bars she didn't know. Places that were open later than they should be. When she asked, his voice hardened. "Why you always questioning me? I'm out here working. You think I'm just playing? You sound ungrateful, Zoe." She backed off at first. She had learned long ago that pushing too hard on some people made them disappear. When she found out she was pregnant, she hoped fatherhood would change something. She hoped holding a child with his eyes and her smile might soften the edges of his anger, might anchor him in a way nothing else had. The night Jaden was born, the sky outside the hospital was a dull, steady gray. Rain tapped soft against the window. Zola's body ached in ways she didn't know were possible, but when the nurse placed that warm little bundle on her chest, everything inside her rearranged. He was perfect in that raw, wrinkled newborn way. tiny hands curling around her finger, small chest rising and falling in quick breaths. She looked at him and felt something she hadn't felt in years, certainty. This is my purpose. This is my person. Derek stood by the window, snapping a few photos with his phone. He posted one with a caption about blessings and new life. He kissed her forehead, touched the baby's hand once, and then said he needed to go handle some stuff and would be back later. Later stretched longer than it should have. By the time Jaden turned 2, patterns had formed that were hard to ignore. Derek came home late more often than not. He snapped when she asked about money. He disappeared for whole weekends with thin explanations. The bottles in the trash increased. The promises decreased. Zola found herself doing all the real parenting alone. Doctor visits, bath time, lullabies, picking Cheerios off the floor. She worked nights, came home exhausted, and still had energy left for her son because that part didn't feel like work. It felt like breathing. The decision to leave Derek didn't come in one big dramatic moment. It arrived in pieces. A disconnect notice on the door. An empty fridge. A night when Jaden asked in his small voice, "Where Daddy?" And she had no answer that didn't feel like a lie. One evening, she sat at the table with overdue bills spread out in front of her. The apartment was quiet, except for the sound of cartoons playing softly from the bedroom where Jaden was trying to fall asleep. The spot where Derek usually dropped his keys was empty. It had been empty all week.
I looked around that apartment and did something I hadn't done in a long time. I told myself the truth. I was tired of setting an extra plate for someone who didn't show up. Tired of explaining away his absence. Tired of feeling like I was begging my own husband to be a father. I realized I was already carrying the whole weight of our life on my shoulders. Leaving wasn't about breaking our family. It was about admitting I'd been holding it up alone for a long time.
She packed quietly before dawn. She put Jaden's clothes in one bag, grabbed their important papers, folded his favorite blanket, and slipped his small toy car into her pocket because it felt wrong to leave it behind. She didn't throw anything of Derek's away. She didn't slam any doors. She just closed one behind her, walked down the stairs with her son sleeping on her shoulder, and didn't look back. The next apartment was smaller and older. The paint chipped near the baseboards. The hallway light flickered sometimes. But when she signed the lease, the line that said tenant had just one name. Hers. Zola worked double shifts now, sometimes triple. Nights at the hospital, mornings at home with heavy eyes and a soft voice as she read Jaden bedtime stories in reverse. Morning stories instead of night ones. He didn't have expensive toys, but he had pancakes on Sundays, made from cheap mix and love. He had drawings taped to the fridge. He had a mother who showed up. In that building lived another woman, Mrs. Caldwell. She was retired, alone, and watched everything like it might misbehave if she looked away. She didn't like noise. She didn't like kids in the hallway. She didn't like trash being taken out late, or music played even a little too loud. Anytime Jaden laughed too hard outside their door, the people would darken. Sometimes her door would open a crack, just enough for her eyes to appear. "Some of us like quiet," she would say. Zola apologized. She always did. She smiled, kept her voice soft, pulled Jaden gently back inside. She didn't have the energy for a war with the neighbor. Peace, even uncomfortable peace, was easier. For a while, they settled into a rhythm. Work-home bills one day flowing into the next. It wasn't easy, but it was theirs. She had no idea one late sitter and one watchful neighbor were about to turn her whole life into a case file. The clock above the stove blinked 6:31 p.m. Zola had 15 minutes before the bus. She was still in her uniform, blue scrubs that smelled faintly of disinfectant and lemon polish. Jaden was on the floor, knees crossed, a toy car racing endlessly between his hands and the edge of the rug. The evening light came through the curtains in thin lines, painting the room with stripes of gold and shadow. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Kira, 6:32 p.m. "Hey Ms. Z, bus got stuck by the bridge." Give me 20 minutes. I'll be there, promise. Zola stared at the screen for a beat too long. 20 minutes. Her bus didn't wait for anyone. Her supervisor didn't either. She walked over to Jaden, sat on the edge of the couch, and brushed his hair from his forehead. Baby, listen. Kira's just a little late, okay? You remember Kira? He nodded, not looking away from the cartoon. She brings cheese puffs. That's right. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I gotta go or my boss is gonna flip. You stay right here on the couch. Food's on the table. Door stays locked. No opening for anybody. Not the neighbor, not nobody. You hear me? Jaden paused his car and looked up. Not even if they say it's you? Not even then. You wait for Kira or for me. And I'm gonna call you before bed like always. He nodded. I serious now. Zola kissed his forehead, picked up her bag, and stood at the door. For a moment she just stood there, key in hand, heart split in two.
I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I just stay? Because when you're poor, stay means starve. My boss had already warned me twice about missing shifts. That job kept the lights on, the rent paid, the school shoes bought. So I did what women like me always do. I told myself it's just 20 minutes, that my baby knows the rules, that Kira will walk through that door before he even finishes his cartoon. I locked the door, kissed his cheek, and pretended that faith was enough. It wasn't courage. It was survival.
She locked the door, called out, I love you, and heard his tiny voice echo back, I love you too. The hallway smelled of old paint and fried onions. As she hurried down the stairs, a door on the second floor opened a crack. An elderly woman peered through the sliver of light. Mrs. Caldwell, flat 2B, the self-appointed guard of the building. Downstairs, Mrs. Caldwell set her mug of tea on the windowsill and pulled aside her curtain. Through the thin fabric, she could see Zola walk briskly across the parking lot toward the bus stop. She noticed the boy's shadow still dancing in the apartment above. Her mouth tightened.
When you live alone long enough, you start listening to buildings instead of people. They creak different when something's wrong. That night, the air felt off. I'd seen that young woman, always polite, always running, but I told myself she worked too much to notice the noise her boy made. Then I saw her leave, quick like she was late, and the light upstairs kept moving. No sitter came. Every news story I'd ever watched about children left alone started playing in my head. I didn't mean harm. I meant safety. So I called. Not because I hated her, because I was afraid to be the neighbor who did nothing.
Her fingers shook as she dialed the hotline. By 7:05, a CPS dispatcher had sent a car. By 7:25, a social worker and a uniformed officer were climbing the stairs. They knocked hard. No answer. They called Zola's name through the door. Jaden froze on the couch, remembering her words. Don't open for anyone. The cartoon kept talking over the sound of their voices. Keys jingled. The door opened. In the official report, the language would be clean and cold. Child found unsupervised. Removed for safety. The truth was Messier, a scared little boy clutching a toy car while strangers told him they were helping. At 7:40 p.m., Zola was pushing a mop down a hospital hallway when her phone buzzed again. She stepped aside to check it, hoping for Kira's message. Kira. Ms. Z, I'm so sorry. I didn't make it. Phone died. I'll explain tomorrow. Her vision blurred for a second. She dialed immediately. No answer. She called again. Voicemail. She texted. Jaden is alone. Call me now. Nothing. The hall seemed to tilt for a moment. She pressed a hand against the wall, then kept working one tile at a time, counting minutes like prayers. By midnight the rain had stopped. By 3 a.m., she was on the bus home, half asleep, uniform damp from sweat and worry. She climbed the stairs quietly so she wouldn't wake Jaden. The apartment door looked normal, lock still turned in place. She opened it and stepped inside. Baby, I'm home. Silence. The TV was off. The blanket on the couch was folded wrong. Then she saw it. A piece of paper on the table, weighted down by the salt shaker. She read the words twice before they made sense. Child removed for safety. Contact CPS. Her knees buckled before the tears came.
I walked through that apartment calling his name like sound could pull him back. I opened the closet, the bathroom, even the empty fridge door. Everything was where it belonged except him. I sat on the couch staring at that note, trying to decide if I was dreaming or dying slow. You ever been punished for being poor? It's a kind of theft that leaves the lights on but takes the reason you turn them on.
She dialed the number on the notice. A recording. Music. Static. Then a voice. Case number. I don't have one. Name. She gave it. Clicks of a keyboard. Your child has been placed in temporary care. You'll get details by mail. Zola's voice shook. I don't need mail. I need my son. Ma'am, you'll have to come to the office. The line went dead. She sat there until sunrise, staring at the spot on the floor where Jaden's toy car had stopped rolling. The next day she went to work. Not because she was ready, but because she didn't know what else to do. Tasha, the night janitor with bright eyes and a loud laugh, noticed instantly.
The first thing I saw was her hands, shaking so bad she almost dropped the mop. You don't have to ask what happened to someone like that, you just know. So I kept quiet, handed her new gloves, and slipped a sandwich into her locker later. No words, just a note, you're not alone. That's all you can give a woman who's trying not to drown on dry land.
That night Zola found the sandwich and the note. It was the first time she cried since reading the notice. The next morning she took a bus across town to the CPS office. A gray building that smelled like paper and old coffee. The waiting room was full of mothers with files in their hands and hope slipping from their eyes. She signed in. Waited. A caseworker finally called her name. Inside, the office was small and cluttered. The woman behind the desk spoke in short sentences. You work nights? Yes. Child was alone? For 20 minutes. I had a sitter. She was late. You'll need a lawyer. That's how Mr. Clark entered her life. He was a legal aid attorney with graying hair and a desk that looked tired of paperwork. He didn't smile much, but he listened.
I've seen every kind of case. Liars, addicts, folks who just stopped trying. But she walked in holding her folder, like it was a child she was still protecting. I read her report twice and realized the system didn't need her to fail. It had already decided she had. All I could do was give her a map through a maze that wasn't meant to be escaped.
He gave her a list, documents to collect, forms to sign, statements to write. He told her to keep it factual, no emotion. That night she sat at the kitchen table, pen hovering over a blank page. Then she wrote, I work nights. I left for work at 6:45. The sitter was scheduled for 6:30 and texted at 6:32 that she was late. My child was alone for 20 minutes. I left food and instructions. I called twice. I am his mother. That is not a role I abandon. She folded the paper, slid it into the folder, and set it in the center of the table. The rain started again, soft against the window. This time she didn't flinch. The letter came 3 days later. It was thin, folded in thirds, the kind of envelope that usually carried bills or bad news. Zola found it on the mat when she opened the door, the CPS logo stamped in the top corner like a warning. For a second she just stared at it, keys still in her hand, heart knocking against her ribs. She took it to the table, sat down slowly, and slid her finger under the edge. The paper crackled as she unfolded it. Notice of supervised visitation. Assigned center. 30 minutes. Room 3. Her eyes went straight to the date and time. Thursday, 2 p.m. Her shift didn't start until 7 that day. She exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. On the back, there was a list of rules. No outside food. No recording. Stay seated. Say goodbye when the staff tells you time is over. She read them twice, then folded the paper carefully and tucked it into the same folder where she'd put her statement. That night she didn't sleep much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jaden's face, confused, scared, trying to be brave. She kept replaying the moment she'd locked the door, wondering if there had been one tiny path she didn't see. By morning, she'd made up her mind about one thing. If they were only going to give her 30 minutes, she was going to show up like those 30 minutes were holy. She took a long shower, washed the bleach smell from her skin, and put on her cleanest jeans and a soft gray sweater. Nothing fancy, just neat, respectable. The way people expect a good mother to look when they're deciding if she still deserves her own child. Before she left, she opened the top drawer of Jaden's little dresser. Inside was the toy car he liked to sleep with sometimes, its paint chipped on one side. She picked it up, held it for a second, then slipped it into her pocket.
I know it's just a toy car, plastic and chipped. But when you've had someone taken from you by a system that writes more than it listens, you start holding on to the small things they touched. That car in my pocket felt like proof that he was real, that we were real. I told myself, if they won't let me bring him food, I'm at least bringing him something that still smells like home. I didn't even know if they'd let him keep it. I just needed something of his close to my hand when I walked through those doors.
The visitation center was across town, tucked between a laundromat and a pharmacy. From the outside, it looked quiet, ordinary beige brick, a faded sign, a buzzer by the door. The kind of place you could walk past 100 times without ever noticing. Zola stood on the sidewalk for a moment, staring at the entrance. People moved around her, shopping bags in hand, laundry baskets on hips. The city doing what it always did, minding its own business while other lives fell apart behind closed doors. She smoothed her sweater, took a breath, and pressed the buzzer. A static voice crackled through the speaker. Yes. I'm here for a visit. Matthews. 2 p.m. The lock buzzed. She pulled the door open and stepped inside. The lobby was small and too bright, the overhead lights humming softly. The walls were painted a pale yellow with cartoon posters taped up, smiling animals, rainbows, a big tree with paper hands as leaves. The chairs were plastic and lined up along the wall, all facing a reception desk behind cloudy glass. She wasn't alone. A man in a faded work jacket sat hunched over with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. A woman with a neat bun and red lipstick twisted a tissue in her hands until it looked like cotton string. A teenager sat in the corner with earphones in, eyes closed, head against the wall. Zola kept her eyes low, walked to the window, and slid the letter under the opening. The receptionist glanced at it, then at her. The woman's hair was pulled back tight, headset crooked on one ear, computer screen glowing blue beside her. First visit, she asked. Yes, Zola said. Her voice came out thinner than she expected. Okay, I'll need an ID. Zola handed it over through the slot. The woman typed something, her fingers moving fast, her face unreadable. There are a few rules, she said. You probably read them already, but I still have to say them out loud. No food, no drinks, no gifts that can't be checked. You stay seated. No yelling. If your child gets upset, you stay calm. When staff says time is over, it's over. You understand? Yes, Zola said again. The woman gave the ID back and slid a small sticker toward her with visitor stamped in black letters. Have a seat. They'll bring him to room 3. Someone will come get you when it's time. Zola turned away, the sticker stuck awkwardly to her sweater, and sat in an empty chair. Her legs felt too heavy, her hands too light. For a moment she stared at the floor tiles. Then her eyes went to the woman behind the glass again.
I've seen more reunions in this lobby than I can count, and none of them look like the ones in movies. There's no music, no slow motion runs. Just parents clutching papers like lifelines and trying not to cry in front of strangers. I have to sound cold sometimes, because if I don't, I fall apart with them. Folks think I don't care, But what they don't see is how I go home at night and remember every name I stamped visitor on. You can't work this desk and stay soft on the outside. Being soft is a private thing in this job.
A door across the room opened, and a little girl walked out holding a small stuffed bear. A woman in a navy dress following close behind. The girl's eyes were red. The woman's were worse. They didn't look at anyone else as they passed. Zola swallowed hard. Her fingers reached into her pocket and closed around the toy car. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. Every time the door to the back hallway opened, her heart jumped. Every time it wasn't Jaden, it sank again. She watched the man in the work jacket get called first. He disappeared down the hall in slow steps. Then the woman with the tissue. Then the teenager. Finally, a door on the side of the lobby opened, and a short woman in a dark cardigan stepped out. She held a clipboard and wore a badge that said Family Services, Rosa. Ms. Matthews. Zola stood so fast the chair squeaked. Yes. Come with me, the woman said. We're going to room 3. They walked down a hallway that smelled faintly like crayons and sanitizer. Doors on each side had numbers taped to them. Some had children's drawings pinned up. Uneven hearts, houses with too many windows, stick figures holding hands. Rosa pushed open the door marked 3. Inside was a small room with a table for chairs and a low shelf with a few toys, a coloring book, some broken crayons in a plastic cup, a wooden puzzle with one piece missing. The windows were narrow and high up, showing only a strip of sky. You can sit wherever you like, Rosa said. He's on his way. I'll be sitting in the corner. I don't interfere unless I have to. We just observe. She pulled a small notepad from her pocket and sat in a chair by the wall. Zola stood in the middle of the room for a second, feeling like if she moved too fast she might knock the moment over. Then she sat in the chair closest to the door. Her hands wouldn't stay still. She smoothed her jeans, folded and unfolded the crease of her sweater, touched the edge of the table like she was checking if it was real. Rosa watched quietly, pen resting on her notepad.
I wish I could tell you I'm used to this. But you don't get used to watching mothers and children try to fit the whole weight of their bond into 30 minutes. My job says, observe, so that's what I write. Arrived on time, brought appropriate items, child responded well. But what I don't write is the way their eyes light up when the door opens, or how some of them breathe like they were underwater until that hug. I sit in the corner and pretend I'm just a clipboard. Truth is, every visit takes a piece out of me too.
The hallway outside fell quiet. Then Zola heard footsteps. 2 sets. One light. One heavier. Her eyes locked on the door. Her heart felt like it climbed right into her throat. The handle turned. The door opened slowly and there he was, Jaden, in jeans that were a little too big at the waist and a blue hoodie she'd never seen before. His hair was neater than she usually kept it, curls tamed and patted down. His eyes searched the room, a little uncertain, until they landed on her. Mommy. The word came out so small it almost broke. Zola stood up so fast the chair scraped back against the floor. Hey baby. She didn't know whether to run or walk. She chose something in the middle, crossing the room in 3 shaky steps. Jaden moved too. And then he was in her arms, his face pressed into her chest, his arms locked around her neck. Everything else, the room, the rules, the clipboard in the corner, faded for a moment. There was just the weight of him, solid and warm, proof that he wasn't a file or a number or a line in someone's report. He was her child. I missed you, he mumbled into her sweater. I missed you more, she whispered, her voice shaking. So much more. She wanted to stay like that, standing, holding him. But Rosa cleared her throat gently. You both can sit, she said softly. You have 30 minutes. Zola swallowed the urge to snap back, pulled herself together, and guided Jaden to the chair beside her. She sat close enough that their shoulders touched. A woman stood quietly in the doorway, the foster mother. She was in her 40s, with kind eyes and tired shoulders. A staff badge hung around her neck next to a house key on a string. "This is Ms. Carter," Rosa said. "He's been staying with her while things get sorted." Zola forced herself to look at the woman. "Thank you for taking care of him." Ms. Carter gave a small nod. "I'll step out," she said. "I'll be right here if he needs me." She closed the door behind her, leaving Zola, Jaden, and Rosa in the little room with the high windows. Jaden's hand found the edge of the table. He tapped it gently, like he was trying to see if it would make music. Zola watched him, memorizing every movement. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the toy car. "Look what I brought." His eyes widened. "You found it." "I never lost it," she said. "I was just holding it for you." He took the car carefully, turned it over in his hands, and smiled for the first time since he walked in. It was a small smile, but it was real. They sat like that for a moment, not quite sure where to start. The minutes on the clock above the door were already moving.
You ever try to fit a whole life into half an hour? That's what it feels like in those rooms. Every question feels heavy. Are you okay? Do they treat you right? Do you miss me? And every answer you want to give is heavier. I'm fighting. I'm scared. I don't sleep without you. But you smile. You breathe slow, because you know there's someone in the corner with a pen, turning your every word into a note about whether you're stable enough to be a mother. So you learn to talk in 2 languages at once, one for your child, one for the system.
"Do you like where you're staying?" she asked gently. "They feeding you good?" Jaden nodded, rolling the car back and forth on the table. "They got spaghetti. A lot. And a dog. But he stinks." Zola smiled, a real one this time. "You always hated spaghetti." He wrinkled his nose. "Yours is better. You put cheese on top." "I'll make you a whole pot when you come home," she said before she could stop herself. The word home hung in the air between them. Jaden looked up quickly, searching her face. "When?" he asked. Zola's throat tightened. The room seemed to tilt again just a little. She wanted to say, "Tomorrow." She wanted to say, "Soon." She wanted to say, "I'll break down the door if I have to." Instead, she took a breath and chose something she could stand behind. "I'm working on it," she said softly. "Every day. I'm talking to people, filling out papers, going to see a man who knows all the big words they use. I'm doing everything I can." He looked at her for a long second, as if weighing her answer. Then he nodded slowly. "I told them you're not bad," he said. "I told them you work hard." Her vision blurred. She blinked fast. "I know you did," she whispered. "You always tell the truth." From the corner, Rosa's pen moved lightly over the page. She didn't look up. The clock above the door ticked on. Outside, in the hallway, other doors opened and closed, other names were called, other 30-minute lives began and ended. Inside room 3, Zola placed her hand over Jaden's on the table, feeling his small fingers curl around hers. For the first time since that note on the table, the silence inside her body loosened just a little. She still didn't know how long the fight would be. She still didn't understand half the words in those legal forms. But sitting there, with a toy car between them and a clipboard watching from the corner, she knew one thing with painful clarity. She was not going to disappear. Not from his life. Not from this system. Not from herself. And that was how the first visit began. The part where she had to learn how to be a mother under surveillance. Underscore without losing the softness that made her a mother in the first place. The clock kept moving. Each tick felt louder, sharper, counting down something sacred. Jaden was tracing circles on the table with his finger, the toy car resting under his palm like a secret he didn't want to give up. Zola tried to memorize him. The way his curls bent at the ends, the tiny scar on his chin from when he'd tripped over a curb last summer, the way his foot bounced when he was nervous. Everything inside her wanted to freeze the moment. "Did you bring my notebook?" he asked suddenly. She blinked. "Notebook?" The blue one. The one where you write stuff at night. Her breath caught. No, baby, that's at home. He nodded slowly, disappointment flickering across his face. I just like when you read it to me. The parts that rhyme. Zola's throat burned. She had no idea he'd ever been listening.
I didn't even know he heard me. Those late nights when I wrote things down so I wouldn't scream, I thought I was whispering to the dark. But kids don't sleep through the sound of love trying to hold itself together. He remembered every word, and I sat there, wishing I'd brought that notebook instead of this folder full of paperwork nobody reads.
Maybe next time, she said softly. I'll write something new for you. He smiled a little, tapping the car against the table. Can it be about crowns again? Always, she whispered. From the corner, Rosa looked up briefly, eyes soft behind her glasses. She didn't write anything for a moment. Then Jaden's tone changed, quieter. Mommy, Miss Carter says sometimes when parents mess up, kids gotta stay somewhere else till it's fixed. Zola's stomach clenched. Did she say that? He nodded. But I told her you didn't mess up. I told her you just work. Zola swallowed hard, forcing herself to keep her voice steady. You're right. I just work. But sometimes grown-ups see things different when they don't know our story. He looked at her for a long time. So we just gotta tell them better? The words hit like a light turning on in the dark. Yeah, she said slowly. We just gotta tell them better. A soft knock interrupted them. Rosa checked her watch, then stood. 5 minutes. Zola nodded, though the number felt cruel. Jaden frowned. Already? She brushed his cheek with her thumb. Already? He stared at the floor. Can I come home after next time? Zola took his small hands in hers. I don't know, baby. But I'm trying. I promise. He squeezed her fingers. I'll wait. From the doorway, Miss Carter appeared again, smiling gently. Chant. Time to go. Jaden looked at his mom one last time. Can I keep this? He held up the toy car. Zola nodded. Of course. That's yours. He clutched it tight, then threw his arms around her neck. Don't forget to write my story. I won't, she whispered into his hair. You're already in every one. She didn't let go until Rosa cleared her throat again, softer this time. Then she did what mothers do, she smiled through it. Jaden followed Miss Carter out, the blue hoodie shrinking down the hall until the door clicked shut. The room suddenly felt bigger and empty in all the wrong ways. Zola sat back down, staring at the chair across from her. The clock kept ticking, but she had no more minutes left to count. Rosa stood, gathering her clipboard. She hesitated, then spoke quietly. Ms. Matthews, he smiled today. That's a good sign. Zola nodded without looking up. He always smiles when he feels safe. Rosa's mouth tightened like she was swallowing words she couldn't say. She finally just murmured, keep showing up. They noticed that. Then she left. Outside, the afternoon light was harsh. Zola stepped out of the center, clutching her folder to her chest. The street felt too bright, too loud. She walked until she reached the bus stop, then sat down hard on the metal bench. The ache hit her all at once. Not just missing him. It was the sound of goodbye still ringing in her chest. She covered her face with both hands and let herself cry quietly. No sound. Just tears and shaking shoulders. People passed by, pretending not to see. A man in a brown jacket was sitting at the far end of the bench, tapping on a tablet, headphones hanging around his neck. He glanced sideways once, then again. He hesitated, then spoke gently. You okay, ma'am? Zola wiped her face quickly. Yeah, just long day. He nodded slowly. Those centers never feel right. My sister went through the same thing. Lost her daughter for 3 months before anyone listened. Zola froze. You know about that? Yeah, he said, turning the tablet toward her. I run a podcast, small one. We talk about stories the system likes to bury. Name's Malik. She blinked. A podcast. Yeah. Real people, real voices. Not headlines. He paused, studying her face. You look like you got a story that deserves to be heard. Zola gave a small, tired laugh. Maybe. I just don't know where to start. Malik shrugged. Start with the truth. It's louder than everything else. He reached into his bag, pulled out a flyer, and handed it to her. Community Center, Saturday. Parents' rights group meets there. You should come. She looked down at the paper. Bold letters read, Stand up for families. Below it, smaller words, because no one should lose their child to poverty. Malik stood, adjusting his jacket. I'll be there recording if you ever feel ready to talk. People need to know what this really looks like. He walked away, leaving her on the bench with the flyer fluttering in her lap. For a long time she just stared at it. Then slowly she folded it and tucked it inside the same folder as the CPS letter and her handwritten statement. Different papers. Same purpose. To get her son back. To make them listen. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain again. Zola looked up at the sky, then at her reflection in the bus stop glass. Her eyes were swollen, her hair messy. But something new had crept into her expression. Not anger, not revenge, focus. That was the first moment she stopped surviving and started fighting. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the thin curtains like it was asking permission to enter. Zola sat on the edge of her bed, the flyer from Malik still folded in her hand. Stand up for families, because no one should lose their child to poverty. She had read that line a dozen times, tracing the ink with her thumb. It scared her more than court. In court, she only had to answer questions. Here, she would have to speak. The kitchen smelled faintly of bleach and instant coffee. Zola poured herself a cup, took one sip and set it down. The clock said 8:15 a.m. The meeting was at 10. She looked around the apartment. The dent in the couch where Jaden always sat, his drawings on the wall, the toy car under the table. Everything looked the same, but the silence had changed. It no longer felt like absence. It felt like waiting. She picked up her bag, tucked the flyer inside, and whispered, "All right, Jay. I'm going." The community center was an old brick building between a laundromat and a hair braiding shop. Inside, the smell of coffee and floor wax mixed with perfume. Folding chairs formed a circle beneath a hand-painted banner that read Voices of Mothers. Zola paused at the doorway. People were already talking, women with notebooks, a few men from local advocacy groups, one woman rocking a baby. In the corner, Malik adjusted his mic, focused but kind. He noticed her and waved. "Hey, you made it." Zola smiled faintly, still thinking why. "Because you've got something to say. Sit anywhere you want. No speeches today, just stories." She nodded and took a chair near the edge of the circle. The meeting began with introductions. One woman talked about losing custody after false complaints. Another described working 3 jobs while the court called her unstable. Every voice cracked somewhere in the middle but kept going. When the circle reached Zola, everyone turned toward her. Her throat tightened.
I wasn't ready to speak. My mouth went dry. My heart went loud. They were strangers, but every face looked like someone who'd been judged in the same language. So I started small.
I'm Zola Matthews.
I'm a mother. I work nights cleaning at the hospital. I had a sitter. She was late. My son was alone for 20 minutes. They called it neglect. I came home to an empty apartment and a note that said he was removed for safety. I've been fighting ever since.
The room went still. Someone whispered, 20 minutes? Rochelle reached out and touched her hand. You're here now. That means you're winning. Zola nodded. I'm still learning what that means. From the corner, Malik watched quietly, his mic catching the hum of empathy in the room. After introductions, they broke into smaller groups. Zola sat with Rochelle and Keisha, talking about paperwork, hearings, and the small victories that didn't make headlines, like a judge finally listening or a social worker who smiled. Rochelle leaned closer. We're doing a town hall next month. Family's First Coalition. You should tell your story there. I don't speak in crowds. Keisha smiled. You just did. Right now. Zola opened her mouth to argue, but Malik appeared beside them with his recorder. Mind if I catch a few minutes? I don't want to be a soundbite. You won't be, he said. You'll be a heartbeat. She took a slow breath and began.
I'm not telling this because I want sympathy. I'm telling it because silence makes people believe the system works. It doesn't, not for mothers like me. I did everything right with forms, affidavits, and court dates, but I was still treated like a case file instead of a human being. I'm not perfect, but I love my child, and that should count for something.
Her words hung in the air long after she stopped. Malik lowered the mic. That's the truth we record for. Someone started to clap, then another. The applause wasn't loud, just steady and respectful. Zola looked down embarrassed, but Malik smiled. You just started a conversation. After the meeting, she helped stack chairs and pour coffee. Malik joined her, wiping a table. You did good today. I just talked. That's the hardest part. He handed her a small card that read Community Podcast Network, Malik Rivers. If you ever want to share more, we can record properly. Your story can change how people see mothers like you. Zola turned the card in her hand. You think anyone cares? You'd be surprised who's listening once you start telling the truth. That night, Zola walked home slower than usual. The city lights looked softer, like the world had dimmed for her thoughts. When she reached her apartment, she opened her notebook and wrote, Today I spoke without trembling. Maybe healing starts not with winning, but with words that don't shake anymore. For the first time in months, the silence didn't hurt. It hummed. It waited. 2 weeks later, Malik's podcast went live. He called it I Chose Survival. He added no music, just Zola's voice and the small breaths between her sentences. By noon, people were sharing it. A nurse from her hospital, a social worker group, a women's shelter in another city. Comments appeared quietly. That was me once. We hear you. I left my child for a shift too. She didn't know any of them, yet each message felt like a hand on her shoulder. At work that night, Tasha grinned by the supply closet. You went and got famous without telling me? Zola laughed. If cleaning floors made headlines, I'd be rich. They played your clip on the staff TV, Tasha said. Even the doctors were nodding. You said what everyone's scared to say. Zola smiled. Fame wasn't what she felt. She felt seen. 3 days later, Mr. Clark called. Judge Rowe has advanced the next hearing. Apparently, the board reviewed your public testimony. That good or bad? Depends how you carry it. I'll carry it like truth. Then it's good. The courthouse smelled of paper and sanitizer. Zola arrived early, her folder thinner now, the unnecessary pages gone. She wore the silver crown necklace Maya had given her, and the same black shoes from her first hearing. They still squeaked when she walked. Outside the courtroom, Malik waited, recorder off. No mics today, he said. Just presence. She nodded. Presence is enough. Inside, the benches were half full, not reporters, just community faces she knew. Rochelle, Keisha, Tasha, Maya. For the first time, Zola didn't feel small. Judge Rowe entered. Mr. Clark presented updates, childcare affidavits, verified income, and letters from hospital supervisors. Then Dr. Monroe stood. Your Honor, I've reviewed Ms. Matthews' progress. Her record is exemplary. More importantly, her consistency during visitation shows a stable and nurturing bond. I recommend reunification. The courtroom murmured. Judge Rowe looked at Zola. Ms. Matthews, would you like to speak? She stood, palms damp, voice steady.
I used to think winning meant getting my son back. But standing here, I realize winning started the moment I refused to disappear. I did everything the system asked, but the real work was learning to speak without fear. I don't have much to add, Your Honor. Only that I'm ready to bring my son home and keep doing what I've always done. Love him loud, raise him safe, and show him that mistakes don't define who we are.
Judge Rowe tapped his pen, looked at her file, then at her. Your words carry weight, Ms. Matthews. The court finds you fit for full custody. Case closed. He struck the gavel once. Zola didn't move. The sound echoed through her chest like thunder finally breaking. Outside, the hallway felt wider. Maya hugged her first. See? Dignity wins slow, but it wins. Tasha wiped her eyes. Girl, I told you. Famous. Zola laughed through tears. No. Free. Malik lifted his camera but didn't film. Some moments stay sacred. Zola nodded. This one's mine. That evening, she waited outside the visitation center one last time. Jaden ran down the steps, backpack bouncing, toy car in hand. When he saw her, he didn't ask anything. He just sprinted. She dropped to her knees, arms wide. He crashed into her, laughing and crying. I told them you'd win, he said. I told them I'd come, she whispered. They held each other, the city noise fading behind them. Back home, pancakes sizzled on the stove while cartoons played too loud. Jaden taped a new drawing to the fridge, a picture of their apartment with balloons in the windows and a banner that read "We came back." Zola smiled. Too much syrup? Never, he grinned. Later that night, after he fell asleep, she opened her notebook. She wrote slowly, "They tried to break my spirit. I built something stronger instead." She closed it, placed it beside Jaden's crown drawing, and turned off the light. Outside, rain began, soft and steady, forgiving. Inside, Zola finally rested. Not because the fight was over, but because she had learned how to live beyond it. The next morning came without an alarm clock, without panic, and without papers waiting on the table. For the first time in almost a year, Zola woke up to peace. Jaden was already on the floor, sitting cross-legged, building a castle out of cereal boxes. He looked up and smiled, asking if it was pancake day. Zola laughed and told him every day was pancake day now. She tied her hair back and began to hum. Not the tune of exhaustion, but the sound of home. The apartment felt alive again. The air smelled of butter and syrup, and laughter filled the corners as if it had been waiting to return. After breakfast, Jaden grabbed his crayons and said he was going to draw a new picture, one where they both had crowns. Zola watched him from the sink, water running over her hands. She didn't stop him this time. She didn't tell him crowns were pretend, because now they weren't. Later that week, she went back to work at the hospital. The halls looked the same, long and pale with the quiet hum of machines, but the way people looked at her was different. Nurses smiled. The supervisor nodded. Even the security guard at the door greeted her by name. She mopped the same floor she always had, but she didn't move the same way. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was standing in her own victory. At lunch, Tasha met her by the vending machine and asked if she was back for good. Zola smiled and said she was back for better. Tasha grinned and said that was what she wanted to hear. They clinked their soda cans together like a quiet celebration. That night, Zola tucked Jaden into bed. He looked up and asked if she was still writing stories. She nodded and told him she wrote every night. He asked if he could be in the next one. She said he already was, and that he was the reason they existed. He smiled sleepily and told her to make his story happy. She whispered that it already was and kissed his forehead. Weeks passed. The city moved on, but people didn't forget. They kept reaching out through emails, letters, and small notes left at the hospital's front desk. Some said her story made them talk to their daughters again. Others said they thought they were the only ones. One said she made them believe in second chances. Zola didn't reply to everyone, but she read every word. One afternoon, Malik showed up outside the hospital with 2 coffees and his usual grin. He asked if she was ready for a follow-up episode. Zola laughed and told him he didn't quit. He said neither did she, and that's why it worked. They recorded in the hospital break room after hours. No microphones, just a phone on the table. Malik began like he always did, asking her to tell him who she was. Zola thought for a moment, and said she was a mother who learned that silence wasn't peace. It was the waiting room for courage. Malik smiled and told her that was the title. The episode went live quietly. It didn't trend, but people listened. Mothers on buses listened. Janitors working night shifts listened. Nurses during their short breaks listened. A week later, a letter arrived from a woman in Detroit saying she had lost custody 2 years ago. And Zola's words made her try again. Zola folded the letter neatly and placed it inside her notebook between pages filled with her handwriting and Jaden's doodles. She wasn't chasing change anymore. She was becoming it. The idea for something new came one evening when Maya stopped by with tea and a tired smile. She asked if Zola had ever thought about starting something. Zola asked what she meant. Maya said maybe a place where mothers like her could talk without judgment or forms, just a place to breathe. Zola looked around her apartment, at the drawings, the notebooks, and the puzzles on the floor. She said maybe, but she didn't want another charity. She wanted a table. Maya asked what she meant by that. Zola said a place where everybody sat equal, where stories fed each other. They both smiled. 2 months later, the first crown table met in the basement of a small library. There were no microphones and no flyers. Just 12 chairs, a pot of tea, and a circle of women ready to speak. Zola didn't lead. She listened. She didn't lecture. She witnessed. She didn't fix. She made space. Maya called it quiet strength. Malik called it real journalism. Zola called it home. At the second meeting, a young woman named Imani spoke about losing her twins during a custody dispute. She cried halfway through her story. Zola reached across the table and held her hand. She said softly that she once thought the world changed when courts decided, but now she knew it changed in rooms like this, where women reminded each other they were still human. That night, Zola walked home under the streetlights, tired but full inside. Jaden was waiting up with a cup of cocoa and a new drawing. It showed a round table, women wearing crowns, and words written across the top that read "The Queen who brought everyone back." Zola laughed through tears and asked if he made it for her. Jaden shook his head and said it was for them, but she could keep it. She hugged him tightly and said they would hang it where everyone could see it. 6 months later, a letter arrived from a shelter in another state. It was written on lined paper, the handwriting uneven but strong. "I heard your story online. I'm not a mother, but I was raised by one who lost everything. I thought love was weakness. You showed me it's the opposite. Thank you." Zola folded the letter carefully and placed it in the same box where she kept Jaden's drawings and her old CPS forms. The weight of both pain and proof felt balanced now. She sat at her kitchen table, pen in hand, and wrote a single line in her notebook. "We survive by telling it, not because it's easy, but because silence is how they win." She closed the book, turned off the light, and let the quiet settle. Not the empty quiet of loss, the sacred quiet of completion. Thank you for staying with me, beautiful soul. You've just heard the story of Zola Matthews, a woman who proved that motherhood is not measured by perfection, but by persistence. They called it neglect. She called it survival. They tried to break her spirit, but forgot that a mother's silence is never weakness. Zola rose, not through anger but through truth. She didn't ask to be seen. She demanded to be understood. And in doing so, she reminded us all that a mother's love is not fragile, it's forged in fire. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe to Black Women's Soul Stories. And tell us where you are watching from, because every city, every heart, deserves to be heard.